Hello, I am the Reading Rainbow Emperor, and today I'm reading out the second chapter. The first chapter is anemic of Rising of a Shield Hero Volume 1. Um, so, for the last 3 weeks, I have been reading out chapters I have found particularly excellent in prose and purpose and characterization and all that jazz. And sadly, um, we must contrast it with things I honestly don't enjoy as much as I enjoy other things. Um, Part of the problem with light novels, and I'll be doing 3 of them that I happen to own physically, uh, is that there's just no substance to them. There's very little description. I have very little feel for the world. Instead, they depend on convention. They expect you to know what the castle looks like, what the people look like, what the details in the robes should be, and how everything looks like. They also prop themselves up with pictures, which honestly don't do much for me. I do like them when I see them, but you should still be able to describe what they look like without the picture, if you know what I mean. Depending on the picture is like depending on a crutch. And it means that you're not putting the same effort into it because you expect that people will understand or accept what little you're actually doing. And then I assume they're popular also because people often have untrained palates. And so don't realize what they're missing out, or they're intimidated by the word choice and structure of something much more refined. Adult tastes. Chapter 2 The Heroes. Oh, wow. I heard the sound of people marveling at something and suddenly was awake again. By the way, the first chapter was introducing himself, how good he is, and how he was able to make his brother an otaku and a doctor. He's special. He's such a good boy. I can't imagine anything bad ever happening to him. And he's entering the world through a book, a library book, that he just happened to read, and apparently has better descriptions than this entire volume. But it only takes 10 pages. Oh, wow. I heard the sound of people marveling at something and suddenly was awake again. My eyes weren't ready to focus on anything, but I pointed them straight ahead anyway. There were men in robes, looking at me in awe and apparently speechless. What's all this? I turned in the direction of the male voice and discovered 3 other people there. Like myself, they didn't seem to know what was going on. I scratched my head. I'd been in the library only moments before, but then why? And just where was I? I flapped my head left and right and found that I was in a room. The walls were made of stone. Is that what they call bricks? Regardless, I don't think it was anywhere I'd been before, and it was certainly not the library. I looked at the floor. It was covered in geometric patterns that had been painted in some sort of fluorescent material. There was also an altar of some kind. It looked like something magical, straight out of a fantasy. We were standing on the altar. Wait a second. Why was I holding a shield? I was holding a shield. It was feather light and fit my hand perfectly. I couldn't figure out why I was holding it though, so I went to put it down, only to find that I was unable to do so. It was like it was stuck to me. Where are we? Just as I was wondering the same thing, the man next to me, the one carrying a sword, asked some men in robes, "Oh, heroes, please save our world." "Nani?" the 4 of us shouted in unison. It says what, but this happens a lot. I'm just going to say Nani, because it's funnier. but the appeal of the robed men sounded familiar. By the way, that's incredibly bad structure. Uh, I know that this is a translation, but I assume they're translating it line by line, and the author originally made the robed men's plea directly after um, the guy asked something. If you need to ask something if you need to say he asked X, you need to have it in front or immediately in the same line behind instead of in a separate paragraph and a couple sentences down, because then that confuses what the subject of the sentence is. The four of us shouted in unison, "What is that supposed to mean?" But the appeal of the robed men sounded familiar, like something I'd read on the internet. There are many complications in this situation, but to offer a simple answer to your question, we have just completed an ancient ceremony and summoned you four heroes. Summoned? Yes, that was it. There was a really good chance that it was all some prank, but there seemed nothing wrong with hearing them out. Besides, it's more fun to be pranked than to prank someone else. Anyway, I don't mind that sort of thing. I think it's fun. Our world teeters on the brink of destruction. Heroes, please lend us your strength, said the robed men, bowing very deeply to us. Well, it wouldn't hurt to, I began to reply, but the other three guys spoke up quickly. I don't think so. Yeah, me neither. We can go back to our world, right? We'll talk about your problems after that. What? Nani? Did they think it was okay to speak to someone like that? Someone that was bowing to us out of desperation? Why couldn't they save their conclusions until after they heard the bulk of the situation? I glared them into silence, and soon the three of them were looking me over. What were they smiling about? We could all feel the room growing tense. What jerts! I bet they were actually happy to be here. Think about it if it were true. They'd get the chance to have an adventures in another world. It'd be a dream come true. Sure, it's a cliche, but still, couldn't we at least hear him out? The guy with the sword looked like he might have been in high school. He pointed his sword at the robed men and nearly shouted, "Don't you feel any guilt for calling people into your world without their permission?" Besides, said the guy with the bow and arrows, even if we save you and bring peace to your world, you'll just send us back home, right? That sounds like a job to me. He was glaring at the robed men. I wonder how much you've considered our opinion on this. I wonder how it could be worth our while. Depending on how the conversation goes, keep in mind we might end up enemies of your world. So that's how it was. That's what they wanted. This is when they try and figure out their standing and demand a reward. Well, they certainly were an outspoken, confident bunch. I felt like I was somehow losing to them. Yes, well, we would very much like to speak with the king. He will discuss future compensation with you in the throne room. One of the robed men, apparently their leader, leaned against a very heavy-looking door until it opened, at which point he pointed in the direction we were to go. Nani ever. Fine. I don't think it matters who we talk to, but whatever. My outspoken companions complained as they left the room in the direction indicated. I didn't want to be left alone, so I followed them out. We walked out of a darkened room and down a hallway made of stone. How should I describe it? The air felt fresh, and I can't think of any other words for it. Vocabulary has never been my strong suit. We were able to steal a glance through a window, and the scenery took our breath away. The clouds were high in the sky for as far as you can see. There, below us, a town spread out from the building we were all in. All the houses lined up pretty, just like one of those European cities you'd see featured in a travel brochure. I wanted to pause for a minute and take it all in, but there was no time. We were hurried past the window and down the hall, and soon enough we arrived in the throne room. Huh. So these kids are the four holy heroes? An important-looking older man was sitting there on the throne. He leaned forward as he spoke. He didn't make a good first impression on me. I just can't stand people who condescend. My name is Altcray Mellow Mark the 32nd, and I rule these lands. Heroes, show me your faces. I almost yelled at him to shut up, but I caught myself just in time. I guess he was in a position of authority, and he seemed to be a king of some sort. Now, then, I shall begin with an explanation. This country, no, this whole world, is on the brink of destruction. Seems like a rather regal introduction. The other guys with me spoke up. Well, I guess that makes sense, considering you'd call us from another world. Yeah, figures. I'll try to summarize the king's story. There was a prophecy about the end of the world. Many waves would appear, and they would wash over the world again and again, until nothing remains. Unless the waves were repelled, and their accompanying calamities avoided, the world was doomed. The prophecy was from long ago, although the time it spoke of was now, this very moment. There was also a large and ancient hourglass that would signal the times. The hourglass predicted the arrival of the waves, and its sand began to fall 1 month ago. According to legend, the waves would come in 1 month intervals. In the beginning, the citizens of the land mocked the legends. However, when the sands of the hourglass began to fall, a great calamity visited the land. A fissure appeared in the country, Melromark, a fissure to another dimension. Terrifying and horrible creatures crawled out from it in great numbers. At the time, the country's knights and adventurers were able to repel the advance of the creatures, but the next wave was prophesied to be even more terrible. At this rate, the country was doomed, having no way to ward off the impending disaster. Considering the situation nearly hopeless, the kingdom decided to summon heroes from another world. Well, that about sums it up. Oh, and by the way, it seems like the legendary weapons enabled us to understand the language of the world. Every time I read this thing, that's like the wrong place to put it in. All right, said one of my companions. I think I understand where you're coming from. But does this mean you are basically commanding us to help you? Seems all fine and good for you. I agree. All this sounds pretty self-centered to me. If your world is on the road to destruction, just let it burn. I don't see what it has to do with us. I could tell by the condescending giggle he struggled to hide that he secretly thought that this was all really cool. Well, it was my turn to speak up next. As they said, we don't have a responsibility to help you. If we dedicate our time and lives to bringing peace to your kingdom, do we get anything besides a thanks and see you later? I mean, I guess what I really want to know is if there's if there's a way for us to get home. Could you tell me anything about that? Hmm. The king shot his vassal a sidelong glance. Of course we are planning on compensating you all for your efforts. The heroes, including myself, pumped our fists in celebration. Yes! Phase 1 of the negotiations complete. Naturally, continued the king, I've made arrangements to support you financially, and also to provide you with whatever you may require, in thanks for your efforts on our behalf. Oh yeah? Cool. Well, as long as you promise us that, I don't think we'll have a problem. Don't think you bought us off. As long as we aren't enemies, I'll help you out, though. Agreed. Me too. Why did they have to act so superior all the time? Think about where we are. Do you really want to make an enemy of the king? Still, I guess it was good to get all the particulars out of the way in advance rather than risk losing everything down the road. Very well then, heroes. Tell us your names. Wait a second. I noticed something. doesn't just notice something. Doesn't all this sound similar to the book I've been reading in the library? The Records of the Four Holy Weapons? A sword, spear, bow, and yes, a shield. And even the four heroes were the same. Could I have somehow gotten pulled into the world of that book? I was starting to mull these things over when the kid with the sword hero, sorry, stepped forward and introduced himself. My name is Ren Amaki. I am 16 years old and a high school student. The sword hero, Ren Amaki. He was an attractive young guy. His face was handsome, and he was relatively short, maybe 160 centimeters. If he cross-dressed, you'd mistake him for a girl in an instant. His face was so composed, his hair was black and cut short, his eyes were sharp, and his skin was white. Overall, he gave off a cool impression, like a quick and slender swordsman. Alright, I'll go next. My name is Motoyasu Kitamura. I'm 21 and a college student. A spear hero, Motoyasu Kitamura. He came off as light-hearted and kind, something like an older brother. His face was at least as well kept as Ren's, the type of guy who was sure to have a girlfriend or two. He was probably around 170 centimeters. His hair was pulled back into a ponytail. I normally don't like ponytails on men, but this seemed to suit him. Otherwise, he seemed like a caring older brother. Okay, my turn. I'm Itsuki Kawasumi. I'm 17 and still in high school. The bow hero, Itsuki Kawasumi, he looked like the calm piano-playing sort of character. How to explain it? He seemed vain, and yet at the same time, he held some unrevealed strength. There was something indefinite about him, something vague. He was the shortest among us, probably somewhere around 155 centimeters. His hairstyle was slightly wavy, as if it had been permed. He was like a soft-spoken old younger brother. Apparently, we were all Japanese, though I thought I would be pretty surprised to see a foreigner here anyway. Oh, my turn already? I guess I'm last. My name is Naofumi Iwatani. I'm 20 years old and a college student. The king looked down at me condescendingly. I felt goosebumps crawl up and down my spine. Now then, Ren, Motoyasu, and Itsuki, correct? Your Grace, you've forgotten me. Ah yes, pardon me, Mr. Naofumi. So the old guy was a little slow on the uptake. But I was still feeling somehow out of place among all there. And now he forgot to include me in such a short list? Now then, heroes, please confirm your status and give yourselves an objective evaluation. Nani? What did he mean by status? Excuse me, how are we supposed to evaluate ourselves? Said Itsuki. Ren sighed loudly like he couldn't be bothered to explain it to us. You mean to say you haven't figured it all out yet? Didn't you realize the moment you arrived here? Oh, come on, he just knew everything. What was it? Guess he was some kind of genius. I mean, he went on, haven't you noticed any weird icons hanging out in your peripheral vision? Nani? But since he mentioned it, if you looked off vaguely and focused on the soft edges of the field of vision, there were literal marks there. I could see them too. Just focus your mind on that icon. I did, and I heard a soft beep, just like I was sitting in front of a computer. The icon expanded to take over my field of vision. It was like opening an internet browser. Naofumi Iwatani. Class, Shield Hero Level 1. Equipment, Small Shield. Legendary Weapon. Otherworld Clothes. Skills, none. Magic, none. There were still quite a few things listed, but I decided to ignore them for the moment. So this is what the king meant by status. Wait, just what the hell was all this? It felt like I was in a game. Level 1. That makes me nervous. Good point. At this rate, who knows if we'll even be able to fight at all. What is all this? Do these things not exist in your world, O heroes? You are experiencing status magic. Everyone in this world can see and use it. Really? I was amazed at how normal everyone seemed to think it was, this numerical expression of your physical body. And what are we supposed to do? These numbers seem awfully low. Yes, well, you will need to go on a journey to further polish your abilities and to strengthen the legendary weapons you possess. Strengthen them? You mean these things aren't strong right from the get-go? That is correct. The summoned heroes must raise their legendary weapons by themselves. That is how they will grow strong. Motoyasu was spinning his spear and thinking, why don't we just use different weapons while these are bulking up? Seems smart to me. That did seem like a good idea, and besides, I was stuck with a shield, not even a weapon in its own right. I'd better get another weapon. Ren cut in to clarify. We can work all that out later. Right now, we should focus on improving ourselves, just like the king asked us to do. It was so exciting! We were heroes summoned from another world. It felt a little like manga, but any otaku worth his salt would jump at a chance like this. My heart was pounding in my chest, and I couldn't get myself to calm down. It looked like the other heroes around me felt the same way. Are we going to form a party, the four of us? Wait just a moment, heroes. Just as we were preparing to set out on an adventure, the king spoke again. The four of you should set out separately to recruit your own companions. Why is that? According to legends, the legendary weapons you possess will interfere with one another should you form a party. Both your weapons and yourselves can only grow when you are apart from one another. I don't understand that at all that, but if we stay together we can't level up, right? Nani? Everyone found instructions near their weapons. We all began to read at the same time. Attention! The legendary weapons and their owners will experience adverse effects if they fight together. Caution! It is preferable that the heroes and weapons are used individually. I guess it's true then. But why did all this sound so much like a game? It was like I'd been transported into a game. Anyway, games don't feel this real, if there were real humans living here. So I guess it was still a reality of one kind or another. Still, the system reminded me of a game, nonetheless. The instructions on the weapons went on at great length and detail, but there wasn't enough time to read them right there and then. So, you think we should try and form our own parties? I will attempt to secure travel companions for you all. Regardless, evening draws near. Heroes, you should rest for the night, and prepare for departure on the morrow. In meantime, I will find companions for you from the village below. Thank you very much. Thanks. We all thanked the king and retired to our room for the night. So, I corpsed there for a little bit, broke some character. So, talking about this chapter that we just read. So we had some characterization of the main character in the previous chapter, as well as like some little details about his life, that sort of thing. The problem is that there's no weight to it, and the character doesn't seem to have anything to him. There's nothing that disrupts his flow. Even being transported into another world keeps him more or less the same person as he was in Chapter 1, and assumingly as he is in when he began. It's honestly one of those things that's quite annoying to me, because it like I just kind of breezed through it. Like it was a chapter, it was several pages, but there's maybe I don't know 200, 300 words each page, maybe 400 at best. And these aren't long paragraphs. Like even like I'll go back. Let's see here. There we go. Even during the all the exposition that was going on. The paragraphs are longer, but they're longer than just about anything else there, and they're actually quite short, by my opinion. Keep in mind that I proudly say that I like my sentences like I like my women, long-legged and Byzantine. There's also a certain amount of leeway that is given to a writer when he pursues that style. He is able to describe what he needs per sentence, per paragraph, for as long as he needs. Each sentence is a different thought, each paragraph is a major thought pulled together. Therefore, these are a whole bunch of small, easily digestible thoughts that can be read one at a time after each other, one after another. What's more, I'm sure that somebody sometime, and has, when I've talked about this in the past, complained that I'm essentially blaming the author for the translator's problems, and that would be a legitimate argument if the translation didn't come from a source. Things like translations are difficult on the best of days, but the good writing doesn't change, and it's easily translatable. Murakami and other Japanese writers have excellent translations of their work that are perfectly understandable in my tongue, and not the Japanese one. Excuse me. And so you get these sort of discrepancies in there, like when "vit game" is repeated 4 times, 5 times in one paragraph, or various weird, awkward sentence structures. It almost feels like the translator knew how to translate, but didn't know how to translate into literature. There's no cadence, and oftentimes it's very short and sweet, or it's too long and needed to be broken up, even though it was similar thoughts. What's more is that the descriptions, as well as sort of mood, atmosphere, are very light. There's almost none. It's entirely based on the main character's interactions and mental state, which is itself bland, milquetoast, and upbeat, over anything with any real depth. Part of the benefit of an anime is that you can overlook some things and there's always motion. The problem with literature is that if there isn't that, if it's punchy but doesn't have any weight, it'll be hard to remember later unless there's special details that you need to remember. This would have been a perfect opportunity to use set pieces, where you have something interesting that arrests the attention of the characters. They could have described the altar, what robes the men were wearing, what sort of clothing the king had, what sort of crown. There's a whole bunch of opportunity for characterization, foreshadowing, thematic hints, set pieces, awe, grandeur, etc., that's just not done. And there's no reason not to do it either. It's just not done. And I wish I had a better way to say it. So there's a whole bunch of missed opportunities, and the characterization it favors just isn't there because, as we both know, as we all know, his characterization will take a rapid shift in about, I don't know, 4 chapters. Let's see here. It's one of those things where it's like, I'm just sort of skipping through it. Where it's like his voice is so generic that I can't, like, the reason why we can tell the difference and he's more depressed is that it's what it talks about. For example, let's see here. Nani, an icon was flashing at the corner of my vision. Looks like you're up. Let's get started. I told her to sheath her weapon, and she did as I asked. Oh, hey, I forgot. What? You're gonna have a hard life and die hard. Thanks a bunch. I answered his sarcasm with sarcasm of my own. And it's one of those things here. It's like I still had 3 pieces of silver. Come to think of it, I was pretty hungry. I could hear Raphtalia's stomach grumbling along with my own. I looked over to her and She quickly shook her head, denying her grumbling stomach. What was she trying so hard for? I needed Raphtalia to be strong if I'm going to make any money at all. There's no point to buying a knife if I couldn't keep it sharp. If she was hungry, she wouldn't fight as well as she could. I looked around for a quick, cheap place to eat. I picked one, and as I entered, "Come on in." The place was a little beat up, and the waitress seemed a little confused as she led us to our seat. On our way to the table, Raphtalia spotted a family eating across the room. She locked her gaze on them. The kids were eating a kid's meal, and she was staring at it enviously. So that's what she wanted. We took our seats, and I ordered before the waitress had the chance to get away. So let's see here. So if we look at it and we just compare it to the stuff that we had before, fundamentally, his voice is unchanged. That would normally be good, but the problem is that there's no turn of phrases, no descriptions, no desires that really translate from one to the other. We don't know who he is. Oh, he's an otaku nerd. That's not the same thing. I'm a nerd, but I'm a nerd of literature. I have certain desires. Oh, but he played X games. He played dating simulators. This is a fantasy world. So on and so forth. There's a whole bunch of if you look at it with the eyes that I kind of look at things, it starts to break down pretty hard. And even though his callous treatment of Raphtalia, which we heard about it, sort of says to how he changes it, there's never actually any show of how he treated people in the first bit. He is bland, respectful, and I assume in proper Japanese form, but not archaic, special, interesting, or memorable Japanese form. Ultimately, I could go on forever about this sort of thing, and I kind of wish it's like I consider this such a pity. This is the book that got popular, and it's probably the best of the isekai genre shows, just on the virtue of the fact that it has a decent magic system for once, and it can kind of hold its own philosophically and character-wise compared to some of the other guys out there. I'm in another world with my smartphone. How's your character doing? Perfectly fine. I hate isekai. And I kind of hope the genre dies within my lifetime, but it doesn't look like it. Anyway, thank you all for listening in as I rambled on and on about literature I hated. Sorry to say that I had to give back my camera that I was borrowing, and I'm back to the laptop's camera, but I'll do my best and save up for a new camera. Then let's see here. Yeah, be sure to check up my writer mentoring course on Fiverr, as well as all the other things that I do with my life, whose links will be down below in the doobly-doo. I want to thank you all, and you're all wonderful.